Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we are doing a deck tech for Wolverine, the best there is. Wolverine is a 3-mana 2/2 unrivaled lethality, double all damage Wolverine would deal. At the beginning of each end step, if Wolverine dealt damage to another creature this turn, put a 1/1 counter on him, and then we can pay 2 mana to regenerate him. So this is some Gruul fighting. So why play Wolverine? Because he's a great fight target. He's always going to double damage, which is great. So at the very worst, he's hitting for 4, and then even if he would die, we can just regenerate him, so he still kind of lives. He has very high kill damage potential with commander damage because he does double all damage. He also enables himself every turn to put a 1/1 counter on him, which is also very, very cool. So triggers on each end step every single turn. If we have funny instant speed stuff, we can always put a 1/1 counter on him during an opponent's turn. Probably almost always going to get a counter on him during our turn. Regenerating him for 2 mana is very good. It's always just a little bit of inherent protection, which is always nice. Another interesting thing about the deck is that the deck focuses on killing opponents' creatures, which Wolverine does exceptionally well. So the cool thing about the deck is Wolverine deals double damage to creatures and opponents. So when he's fighting them, he's essentially clearing the path for all of our other creatures as well as him. So we can get in a lot easier. And also he's the best there is. His name, he's literally Wolverine, the best there is. Why would you not play a card that's the best there is? Here's the game plan. We don't need him to win. Although I hype him up and he's cool and he's great, we're still just Gruul big dudes at the end of the day. So early game, we just want to get down some rocks and ramps. Mid game, we want to play some Wolverine and play some fight spells. Start having Wolverine clear the way, getting some counters on him. And then late game, we want to drop our big creatures to clear the way and win by swinging large Gruul creatures, Wolverine at people, with little guys without anyone in the way to really stop them. Channel and deck stuff. The deck is pretty cheap. The deck cost about $260 at the making of the video. As always, I'll give you guys a little spoiler. There is a Great Henge in the deck. That card itself is like $50. So if you want to save yourself a fifth of the deck cost, don't add Great Henge. It's really good in the deck, but it's also like a fifth of the cost. Get the cards you need from the link down below. And then as always, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Subscribing always helps out. I definitely appreciate it when you guys do. Let's talk about Planeswalkers. Domri and Arcabolas, super great all around for this deck. 3 mana, 3 loyalty. Creatures you control get +1/+0. Sounds kind of silly, but now Wolverine is a 3/2, and now he's dealing 6 damage. We also add a red or a green, and then creature spells you cast this turn can't be countered. No, some cards say that it's like, oh, add a mana, whatever, and then the next creature spell can't be countered. It's like, no, you just get a mana, and then creature spells for the rest of your turn cannot be countered. It's not just the next one, it's all of them, which is really good, because we're a big creature deck, and we don't want our big guys getting countered. And then we can just have a creature fight something we don't have. So we can just have one of our creatures fight, most likely win, and kill another. Really good. Vivian's Monster Advocate. You can look at the top card of your deck at any time, so we always know what we're drawing and we can plan accordingly. We can cast creature spells from the top of our deck, so it's kind of like we have an extra card in our hand. We have like 33 or so creatures in this deck, I think. So that's pretty much almost a third of the time. Then we can +1, make a 3/3 beast creature token, put your choice of a 1/1 counter, a reach counter, or a trample counter. These guys are great blockers, just because we don't have a ton of dudes with flying or reach. So making reach guys 3/3s really good. Then, the real reason. Whenever you cast your next creature spell this turn, search your library for a creature card with a lesser converted mana cost, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. The super cool thing about this is it's basically a 2-for-1, right? It's a buy one, get one free. If we're casting a 7 mana creature, we're just going to get like a 6 mana creature for free. Not for free, but you know what I mean. It's just kind of like we get like the next best thing, and we can tutor our deck hard for a creature, which is very nice. We have Andrag the Quake Mole. He's a mole god. Whenever he becomes blocked, untap each creature you control. After this combat, there's an additional combat phase. He's a 4 mana 8/4. So early game, he's probably getting chumped. And then later game, as it comes down, you can pay 7. He must be blocked each combat if able. So the way this fun interaction works is you attack with him. He has to be blocked. And then since he's probably going to get blocked because someone doesn't want to take 8 damage, and most likely he's going to kill whatever he just blocked, we're going to untap each creature we control and go again, which is really cool. We have Apex Allosaur. What a champion of fighting. 9 mana for a 10/10. When it enters the battlefield, it fights up to 1 target creature you control. However, it has Enrage. When it's dealt damage, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. This, functionally, it's like, I guess technically like an infinite, but like not really. Like it's not, because he'll die eventually, right? So the way you want to look at this card is he kills any number of creatures. He kills basically any number of creatures with total power 9. You can't work on zeros because they don't deal damage to him. So total creatures with power 9. So then he lives, because we don't we can use him as just like get rid of the biggest things, like whatever, but we ideally don't want him to die, because now he's a 10/10 threat. If he becomes blocked or fights or dealt damage, he's going to fight something we don't control, which is just going to be another semi-board wipe for our opponents. And the cool thing is we have fight spells, so we can just make him fight again, which will then enrage him again and just keep fighting creatures, which is cool. Brash Taunter is really great. He's indestructible. Whenever he's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target opponent, and then we can pay 3 mana to have him fight another target creature. You guys are going to see throughout this deck that there are a lot of couple mana instant speed abilities that creatures have. The idea with this is that we're holding up Wolverine to be regenerated anyway if he's on the field. So if we get back to our whole turn cycle and it's our turn, we can just kind of do one of these abilities for free without really worrying. I mean, he could always die in response to it, but at least we can now still plan accordingly. So Brash Taunter is great because if you had him fight, for example, Apex Allosaur, you're not triggering that Enrage, dealing 10 damage to target opponent, and then having Apex Allosaur's ability happen again, which is really cool. And just fighting big things, like having Brash Taunter fight the Quake Mole God, someone's taken 8, it's cool. Atali Primal Conqueror and his flip side, Atali Primal Sickness. He's just too good to not have almost in any Gruul deck. When he enters the battlefield, each player exiles the top card of their library until they exile a non-land card. You may cast any number of spells from among the exiled cards, the non-land exiled cards this way. And you can't exile the lands. So you're pretty much getting a 5-for-1 when you pay 7. You're getting a 7 mana 7/7 with trample, and also 4 other spells to go along with it. You can pay as a sorcery 9 mana and 2 life, because don't pay Phyrexian mana, to flip him over to functionally a trample indestructible infect, kind of. When he does combat damage, they get infect, but he's either one-shotting someone or two-shotting someone, or he's an indestructible 11/11 fighter, which is pretty good. Fanatic of Ronus taps to add a single green. However, if we have Ferocious and have a creature with power 4 or greater, which is probably almost always, we can add 4 green instead. So he's a great mana dork, and sometimes he can pay the big costs. We can Eternalize him. That's still fine, but other than that, he shouldn't die unless it's from the board wipe. Foe Razor Regent, that's a fighting dragon. 7 mana. When it enters the battlefield, you may have it fight target creature you don't control. Whenever a creature you control fights, put 2 1/1 counters on it at the beginning of the next end step. So the way Foe Razor Regent in a nutshell, or at least in a vacuum, would work: 7 mana 4/5. It's going to enter. It's going to kill something with toughness less than 4 or less. Hopefully not killing it, and then at the end step, it's going to make itself a 6/7, and it's going to do that for all of our creatures, which is super cool because putting 2 1/1 counters on Wolverine is nuts, because that's an additional 4 damage every time he does something. Fog Crawler, aka Vigor, Trample. If damage would be dealt to another creature you control, prevent that damage. Put a 1/1 counter on that creature for each 1 damage prevented this way, and then, if it puts into a graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it back in. So this is cool because it makes our fighting not really worrisome. If we have, I don't know, Fog Crawler itself, Vigor, fight a creature, let's say that creature is a 5/5, Fog Crawler is going to kill it, 5 damage won't be dealt to Fog Crawler, and then he'll get 5 1/1 counters, making him an 11/11 with trample. Better yet, we can just do this with Wolverine and put a bunch of counters on Wolverine, which can be really cool. Free Strider Lookout is super sick in this deck. Whenever you commit a crime, look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You may put a land card from among them on the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom in a random order, and then do it only once a turn. The cool thing is when we do our fighting, we're targeting our opponent's creatures. We're targeting our creature and our opponent's creatures. Which, since we're targeting our creatures, they're creatures, we are committing a crime. So every time we do a fight spell, at least once a turn, we're going to look at the top 5 cards. Ideally, hit a land, put it into play, tap for free, which is super cool. Gargo's Vicious Washer. Vigilance, Hydra spells you cast cost 4 less. Straight up does not matter. Ignore that. It's not even on the card. Whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, Gargo's Vicious Washer fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. The idea with him is that he just kind of copies our fight spells in a way. If we want to, let's say, have Galta fight another creature, Gargos is going to see Galta get targeted by a spell, and he's also going to fight some creature. And Gargos is an 8/7, so he's probably not losing. Galta, on the other hand, most likely does not lose. He is a 12/12 with trample that costs 12 mana, but he never costs 12 mana. In this deck, it really wouldn't shock me if he just costs 2 mana almost all the time. Giggling Skitter Spiker, maybe better known as that scary monster, that scary toy from Toy Story that Sid had. You guys know what I'm talking about. 4 mana 1/1 indestructible. When he attacks, blocks, or becomes the target of a spell, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent, which is still pretty good, but it's only 1. However, he has Monstrosity 5, which is basically, if he's not monstrous, put 5 1/1 counters on him, functionally making him a 6/6 indestructible. So now he's good at fighting. We attack, everyone takes 6. We block, everyone takes 6. If we use him to fight, everybody takes 6, and then the fight still happens. He's pretty cool. Goblin and Necromancer, or Anarchaeomancer, however you cast it, I don't know. However you spell it or pronounce it. It's just we're in a Gruul deck. He's a cost reducer. He's pretty good. Speaking of pretty good cost reducers, we have Goreclaw, Terror of Qual Sisma. 4 mana 4/3. Creature spells you cast with power 4 or greater cost 2 less to cast. That's a lot of our cards, and having them cost 2 less is just straight up no joke. Also, whenever he attacks, each creature you control with power 4 or greater gets +1/+1 and gains trample until end of turn. Pretty good. A lot of our creatures are power 4 or greater. Even at worst, he makes himself a 5/4 trampler, which is not even that bad, but really, cost reducing is key. Gruul Rage Beast is a double-edged sword. Whenever he enters the battlefield, or another creature enters the battlefield, that creature fights target creature an opponent controls. This is not a May. You have to do this. So it's cool when you have cards like Gruul Rage Beast, who is a 6/6, he's probably just going to fight and kill any random thing. However, if we cast Goblin and Archaeomancer, we don't want Goblin Archaeomancer to die. So basically, we can't cast now Goblin Archaeomancer if our opponent doesn't have like a 1/1 or like a little token we can pick off, because otherwise we're just playing him and he's dying, which we wouldn't like. But generally, for most creatures in this deck, Gruul Rage Beast works out great. Kagla in Yadaro is a great example of that. It is a 6 mana 7/7. When he enters, pick one. It gains trample and haste until end of turn, which is pretty good. Or you can have it fight target creature we don't control, which is more often than not probably what we're going to want to do. If we're not casting him for 6 quite yet, and we have him in our hand, we can discard him, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment, shuffle him back into our library, and then we draw a card, which is pretty good. It's like a weird Beseiju type effect if we want to get rid of something. So he's great because he can get rid of an artifact, enchantment, most likely a creature, or he's just like a 7/7 with trample haste, which is still fine. Kagla, without Yadaro, the Titan Ape, enters the battlefield, fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. Like, again, he's like a 7/6. He's probably not losing fights. Whenever he attacks, destroy target artifact or enchantment defending player controls. Also really, really good. And then just for 2 mana, return target human you control to its owner's hand. He gains indestructible until end of turn. We have a handful of humans in the deck. I wouldn't really rely too heavy on this. He's just a good fight, big dude that gets rid of artifacts and enchantments. Nayeth of the Dire Hunt. Arguably, not even arguably, I think Nayeth of the Dire Hunt, if you want an alternate commander for this deck, you pick Nayeth of the Dire Hunt. Nayeth is a 4 mana 3/3. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control fight or become blocked, draw a card. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 3 mana. If you do, double target creature's power until end of turn, and that creature must be blocked, which is really cool because let's say we have Wolverine, and let's just use a vacuum. Wolverine is a 2/2. Wolverine now becomes a 4/4. Wolverine must be blocked, and he's functionally dealing 8 damage to whatever blocks him, and we're now drawing a card off that. So pretty good, but even just whenever we fight or creatures become blocked, we're aggressive and we fight a lot, we draw cards, which is great. So we keep filtering through our deck. Nylea Keynight has the whole God devotion thing. Creature spells you cast cost 1 less, which is really good for a creature heavy deck. That's also a highly costed creature heavy deck. And then we can pay 3 mana to essentially surveil the top card of our deck. If it's a creature card, we reveal it and put it into our hand. If not, just go straight to the grave. Either way, it's really good. And that's another one of those abilities where if we're holding up mana to protect Wolverine or whatever anyways, like we can just do that quick little ability. Ojer Castlem, Deepest Growth. Trample for a 5-mana 6/5 Trampler. Whenever he deals combat damage to a player, reveal that many cards from the top of our library. You may put a creature and or a land card from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom. So he's going to get us a free land and a free creature, ideally, from the top 6 cards of our deck, which is really good. If he dies, we just kind of return it back as the Temple of Cultivation, which is just pay 3 mana as a sorcery. Pay 3 mana as a sorcery, flip it over if we have 10 or more permanents. It's Commander. Almost always we're going to have 10 or more permanents. So if you just need a land, and you want to get him back, rather. Ranging Raptors, super sick. Whenever it's dealt damage, you may search your library for a basic land card and then put it onto the battlefield tapped. So the cool thing about Ranging Raptors is not all of our fight spells are going to go to Wolverine. We can just kind of spread them around. Ranging Raptors is a great example of this, just by being like, okay, we're going to use a kill spell or a fight spell and have Ranging Raptors fight like a 2/2 or a 1/1 or whatever token we want to get rid of. And we're going to get land out of it, which is really nice. Ravager Worm is kind of niche, but I do like it. He has Riot, so he's going to enter the battlefield with a 1/1 counter or haste, probably a 1/1 counter. So he's going to enter as a 5/6 that's going to fight target creature we don't control. He has the other ability, instead of fighting, of destroying target land with an activated ability that isn't a mana ability. That can be good, but I feel like generally we want to get rid of our opponent's creatures. Sometimes there's problematic lands, but hopefully we're just getting rid of problematic creatures instead. Ronus the Indomitable. This dude is epic. He does not lose fights, except for that one time against the Scarab God. Or the Scorpion God. My fellow lore buddies can appreciate that. Death Touch, Indestructible, 5/5 for 3 mana. Ronus the Indomitable, or Ronus the Indomitable, can't attack or block unless you control another creature with power 4 or greater. We most likely will by the time it's turn 4 and he can attack. But even though he can't attack or block yet, he can still fight, and he doesn't lose fights. He's going to kill whatever he's fighting. Then, as an extra fun ability, we can pay 3 mana. Another target creature gets +2/+0 and gains trample until end of turn, which is really cool because we can put it on Wolverine, which effectively gives Wolverine +4/+0 and trample until end of turn, which is pretty neat. Ripjaw Raptor is another one of those Ranging Raptor examples where not everything has to go to a big creature. Not everything has to, for fight spells, have to go to Wolverine or whatever. Sometimes we want the utility of getting a land, and Ripjaw Raptor has the utility of drawing us a card whenever he fights or is dealt damage, which is really nice because, like, say, like, if we have, like, I don't know, Kogla and Yadaro on the field, like, we're probably not going to be targeting Kogla and Yadaro to kill, like, a 3/3 when we can just have Ripjaw Raptor do it and just draw cards out of it anyways. Sereth Viper's Fang is super cool. Other tapped creatures you control have Death Touch. When we have our instant speed fight stuff, it's gonna kill things right away. Other untapped creatures you control have hexproof. So ideally what we can do with this is we have hexproof guys fight during our main phase 1, so that they basically can't be killed. The worst thing to happen in this deck is we say, okay, I'm going to have my big creature fight your creature, and then in response to that, they kill our creature, and then our spell fizzles. Sereth helps prevent that because it gives them hexproof, and then we can pay 1 and untap another target creature or land you control. Forget about the land, just giving a creature basically hexproof is pretty good. Selvala, Heart of the Wild. We're probably going to have the biggest creatures. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, its controller may draw a card if its power is greater than each other creature's power. When we got like 7/7s and like 10/10s, it's probably going to be us, and then we can pay a green and tap it for X, where X is the greatest combination. Sorry, the greatest power among creatures you control. As long as we have a 2/2, this is net positive. So, or a 2, whatever. This is net positive for 1 mana. But then we have like other cards, like let's say Coglin. We're like, okay, we're effectively netting 6 off of this, which can be pretty nuts, and drawing cards. The Tarask, I couldn't help but add. I think he's too cool. The Tarask has haste and ward 10 as long as it was cast. Ward 10 legitimately just says hexproof. Like, there's a ward 10's hexproof. When the Tarask attacks, it fights target creature defending player controls. So we can cheese him in some way with like Ogier, or probably not cheesing him in with Vivian, but we're probably hard casting him every single time, and we kind of have the mana to do so, which is fine. So hasty 10/10, ward 10, that's going to fight and kill a creature. Pretty cool. Thorn Mammoth, whenever Thorn Mammoth or another creature enters the battlefield under our control, Thorn Mammoth fights up to 1 target creature we don't control. This is cool because, 1, it's a 7 mana 6 with trample that's going to kill a creature, which is great. And then just as we play creatures, like Thorn Mammoth is just the perpetual fight spell. I'm like, all right, like we played our like a 2/2, like Thorn Mammoth is going to kill that 4/4. It's like, all right, now we're going to play a 3/3, and now Thorn Mammoth is going to kill that 1/1. So as long as he's living, and it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control, so we don't have to do it, which is nice. But it's like, if we can kill our opponent's creatures, kind of why wouldn't we? Thrun, Breaker of Silence, hates silence. He can't be countered. He has trample. He can't be the target of non-green spells your opponents control, or abilities from non-green sources our opponents control. So that's kind of like a nightmare to deal with. And then as long as it's our turn, he has indestructible. So he's great at fighting. He's great at attacking. You kind of can't really get rid of him unless you have like a board wipe. Thrun's super cool. We have Uvenwald Tracker. Uvenwald Tracker is a humble 1/1 for 1. Pay 2 mana, target creature you control fights another target creature. It's just that easy. Just a little mana. If like he's like, my thought process with a lot of like cards like Uvenwald Tracker, right? It's like, who's gonna kill Uvenwald Tracker? Who's gonna waste a kill spell on him, right? And like, even if they do, it's like, it costs us 1 mana. Who cares? Or if not, he's a perpetual fight spell at instant speed. Vorinclex, just that. 5 mana 6/6 trample reach. It's like Treach. Trample Reach. When he enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 2 forest cards, reveal them, and put into our hand. I'll tell you now, spoiler alert, that's probably going to be Cinderglade and Stomping Grounds. Then we can pay 8 mana. Exile Vorinclex and return him to the battlefield, only do it as a sorcery. Mill 10 cards. Put up to 2 creature cards from among the milled cards onto the battlefield. We have big creatures, so it's probably going to be pretty good. Distribute 7 1/1 counters among any number of target creatures you control. In a funny, hilarious world, we're putting all of those on Wolverine, and now having Wolverine be a 9/9, which is 18 damage, assuming he has no other things. And then finally, the Grand Evolution. Until end of your turn, creatures you control have just pay a mana, it fights target creature we don't control. Then return it to the battlefield, just as Vorinclex getting us 2 more lands. So he's nice because we're not going to miss our land drops. He's a 5 mana 6/6 with trample and reach, so he's a great blocker. He's a good fighter when we need him. And then we can just pay 6 or 8 mana on our turn if we feel like it. Get 2 big creatures, get a bunch of counters, and then just ideally wipe our opponent's board per every mana we have. Pretty nice. The final 2 creatures we have are Xenagos, God of Revels, because he has the whole indestructible god devotion thing, which is nice. He's a 6/5 fighter. And then at the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gains haste and +X until end of turn, or X is that creature's power. That kind of ability is nice because we have a lot of like big guys coming in. And we can even like do fun stuff like stacking it like with Zopendril, which I'll talk about in a second. But yeah, when you're doubling up like our 7/7s, like 14/14 swinging in is pretty good. And even like having them fight post-combat for like killing big things is still fine, still pretty neat. Zopendril, Hunger Dominus, 7 mana 4/6, reach. At the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control. Pay 4 life, sacrifice 2 other creatures, put an indestructible counter on Zopendril. So Zopendril is super cool because it's at the beginning of each combat. Not ours. Like, I mean, ours definitely, but our opponents were doubling up all of our guys, so they're extra big. Which no one wants to deal with. If someone wipes the board, we're paying 4 life and making Zopendril indestructible. You can also do kind of funny things. Let's paint a picture. Zopendril and Xenagos, let's say we have a 5/5, right? Zopendrill, at the beginning of combat on your turn, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. Let's stack that first on our turn. Then we go to Xenagos. At the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gains haste and +X, where X is that creature's power. So if we have a 5/5 that goes to a 10/10, that now goes to a 20/20. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So yeah, Zopendrill's good. Just makes our guys big, makes us hard to attack into, which is nice. And he also makes us easy to attack others. Going into sorceries, Bridge Works Battle. A lot of these sorceries are going to get pretty repetitive. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. It fights up to one target creature you don't control. It is a land on the backside. Bushwhack, search your deck for a basic land, put it into your hand, or it's a fight spell. Hull Breach, I do like Hull Breach a lot, and I feel like it doesn't get a lot of credit. For 2 mana, destroy target artifact, or destroy target enchantment, or destroy target artifact and target enchantment. So 2 mana, just getting rid of 2 artifacts and enchantments, I think is pretty good, especially like when you have 3 opponents. Like, surely you can get rid of something. Nature's Lore, search your deck for a forest card, put it into play, get a basic forest, Cinderglade, Stomping Grounds. I think that's all we got. Prey Upon, target creature you control, fights target creature you don't control. It's a fight spell. Primal Might is a super cool fight spell. It's green and an X. Target creature you control gets +X until end of turn. Then it fights up to one target creature you don't control. Here's the cool thing. We don't have to pay anything into X. X can just be 0 and it's Prey Upon. Or what we can do is we can say, I don't know, X is like 5 or whatever. Pay 6 mana into us, make Wolverine get +5/+5, have him kill a creature, and then maybe even, since he's dealing double damage, potentially have him kill a player, which is also really neat. Stomp, pretty good. Just another target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. So we can get rid of planeswalkers with this. Wolverine, for all intents and purposes, says whenever Wolverine deals damage, which he is dealing damage, that creature's just not dealing damage back to him. It's a dual land tapped on the other side, which is nice. But yeah, it's just another fight spell. 3 visits, search your deck for a forest card. Just, again, basically the same thing as Nature's Lore. It's actually the exact same thing as Nature's Lore. Going into instance, we have Ancient Animus. Put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. If it's legendary, then that creature fights a creature or target creature an opponent controls. So in an ideal world, we pay 2 mana, put a 1/1 counter on Wolverine. Wolverine now just kills something. Pretty cool. Beast Within and Chaos Warp. We can kill creatures all day, every day. There's really not much we can't beat in a fight, unless it has something scary like Death Touch. Then that's like a kamikaze mission. Beast Within and Chaos Warp are there to get rid of things we can't fight. We can get rid of artifacts and enchantments. We can fight creatures. There's really not much we can do against, like, problematic lands. There's really not much we could do against, like, specifically planeswalkers or, like, battles, I guess, or whatever. So we want to make sure that we have all of the options available. And even, honestly, in this deck, Chaos Warping ourselves isn't that bad. Heroic Intervention. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. This is good for fighting if someone does a funny combat trick on their turn. Hopefully, or someone decides to wipe a board, we can protect our board, which is nice. Inscription of Abundance kind of does a lot. Choose one, or you can do all of them if you pay good. So it either costs 2 mana, do one, or 5 mana, do them all. Put 2 1/1 counters on target creature, so Wolverine gets bigger. Target player gains X life, where X is the greatest power among creatures they control. Probably us, and let's just assume it's just Wolverine. Why not? So then, with this going on right now, Wolverine's a 4/4. Will now gain 4, or gets, 2 counters. We gain 4 life, and now Wolverine fights something at instant speed. And then it gets a counter on my advanced step, which is pretty cool. Kalani Ambush, just target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. It's a land on the other side. Just really just good instant speed fighting spells, and that one's good because it's a land on the backside. Pit Fight, target creature you control fights another target creature. Very cool. Prize Fight, target creature you control fights target creature you don't control, and then we make a treasure. Ram Through is it deals damage equal to its power to a creature, so not really a fight. But if the creature you control has trample, excess damage would be dealt to that creature's controller. Some of our guys do have trample, but even just having Wolverine just deal damage to a creature, you're still getting the counter on it, which is nice. It's just good instant speed fight stuff. bleh, Cetizen Tactics. 2 mana, cost 1 green for more targets beyond the first. So just until end of turn, any number of target creatures each get +1/+1 and just can tap to have it fight another target creature, which is pretty cool. So I do like this way because you can like just, it's funny for blocks because like it's a combat trick. You're like, okay, this guy gets +1/+1 and now I'm gonna tap it and like fight. So your guy's blocked and like your other guy's dead and your guy that I blocked is now dead. So it could be really cool. Or it's like maybe potentially a board wipe if you have a lot of mana. Who knows? Tail Swipe is cool. Just choose target creature you control and target creature you don't control. If you cast a spell during your main phase, that creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and then it just fights a creature. So it's basically a 1 mana instant speed fight, which is good. Going into artifacts, we have Arcane Signet because it's a good card. Make sure that we're staying consistent. It's good mana ramp. Basilisk Collar is really neat. We can give equipped creature Death Touch and Lifelink. So when we're fighting, when a creature has Death Touch and it fights, it's pretty much an automatic kill unless that thing has Indestructible. The Lifelink is added benefit because with Wolverine we can double that up, and just putting it on like one of our big fighting creatures can be really, really scary. Boxing Ring is a card I legitimately did not know existed until I made this video. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control with the same mana value. So it's kind of like our creatures are fighting when they enter, which is nice because they're not going to have haste. And then whenever a creature fought this turn, we can tap it and make a treasure, which is really cool because it can pay for our, like, it can make some of our fighting stuff be free to cheap, which is good. Soul Ring is Soul Ring, Talisman is a Talisman. They're just good. They're mana rocks that are ramp. Who cares about the damage? It's just like you're getting an extra mana. We're ultimately a big mana deck with all these creatures. We do have the Great Henge that is never going to cost 9 mana. And that will tap for 2 green and then 2 life. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under our control, put a 1/1 on it and draw a card. Just so good all around. Great mana rock, life gain, card draw, beefs up our boys, really good. The final artifact we have is the Skullspore Nexus, because I think this card is absolutely hilarious. Similar to the Great Henge, it's never going to cost 8 mana. Whenever 1 or more non-token creatures you control die, create a green fungus dinosaur with base power toughness equal to the total power of the creatures that died. Then we can pay 2 and tap it to double target creature's power until end of turn. That's a cool fight spell, or even let's just say we have like a 5/5, and someone's like, okay, I'm going to kill your 5/5, or wipe the board or whatever, and we're like, okay, we're going to pay 2 mana and then make that a 5/5, a 10/5, and it's going to die, and now we have a 10/10 token. So pretty cool. Like, it always is going to make sure our guys replaces themselves. Going into enchantments, we have asceticism. Creatures you control have hexproof. Again, our worst nightmare is just saying like, okay, my guy is going to fight your guy, and they say in response to those targets, I'm going to kill your guy, your spell fizzles, you got 2 for 1. You're like, okay, that's not cool. And then we can make everyone a little bit of a Wolverine or generate target creature, which is very nice, just to be able to make sure our creatures live and we can have them fight without worry. Garruk's Uprising, we do have a lot of dudes, which is nice with power 4 or greater, so we're going to be drawing a lot of cards. Creatures we control have trample, which is nice, just good all around. Gimli's Reckless Might is, I think, so cool in this deck. Creatures you control have haste. When we're paying like 7 mana for like a big dude, we want to make sure we can get the most bang for our buck of just being like, okay, here's our 7 mana, 7/7, let's say Kogla. Let's say Kogla, that's a good example. Kogla's going to come in, he's going to fight something, and now he has haste, and now he's going to pop an artifact or enchantment, and then most likely we have Formidable, which is whenever you attack with a creature, but whenever you attack, if creatures you control have total power 8 or greater, target attacking creature you control fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So now we're getting an extra free fight, and our creatures have haste every turn, which is very cool. Rhythm of the Wild, to make sure our creatures can't be countered, which is a huge deal. And then non-token creatures have Riot, so they're either entering with a 1/1 for bigger fighting, or they're entering with haste to attack right away. Finally, the enchantment we have is Season of Growth. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, we scry one, so we're always setting up our draws. And then whenever you cast a spell that targets a creature we control, draw a card. So all of our fight spells now functionally replace themselves. Going into lands, it's really nothing too crazy. Arcane Lighthouse is very important for the deck because if our opponent's creatures do have Hexproof or Shroud, we want to make sure we can fight them because we don't want our opponents to have creatures and we like fighting. Castle Grandbrig is fine. We're a big mana deck. It basically nets you 1 mana effectively because you pay 4 mana and then you tap it to add 6 and then you have to use the land anyway, so you whatever. 6 mana to cast creatures for 4 mana, which is nice. Cinderglade is cool. We can fetch it. It's going to enter the battlefield tapped unless we control 2 or more basics, but we do have a lot of basics in the deck because we are Gruul and mana is not really a big issue. We have Command Tower to tap for any of the 2 colors. We have Fabled Passage to just, it's a nice easy fetch. It's just like a nice easy fetch. At the very worst, it's an Evolving Wilds or a Terramorphic Expanse. At the best, it's the same thing, thins the deck a little bit and gets us an untapped basic. Gruul Turf is actually really neat in the deck. Not really for the deck, but really any decks that have a hand, I guess 2 color decks that have a handful of cards that are like MDFCs, like Kalani Ambush or whatever, that have a land on the other and a fight spell on the other side. We can now just bounce that land later and get that fight spell back and still hit our land drop, which can be pretty nice. Kessig Wolfrun is just fun because if someone doesn't block Wolverine, we can just straight up kill someone with Kessig Wolfrun just by dumping all our mana into it. Even just being like, yeah, Wolverine's going to get like +4/+4 until end of turn. Like that's an extra 8 damage. And that can like really just top someone off of commander damage, which is nice. Rockfall Veil, it's most likely always going to enter untapped. Same thing with Rootbound Crag because we have so many basics. Spire Garden should always be entering untapped unless we have 2 or more opponents. If we have 1 opponent, who cares if this enters tapped? Like we're far enough in the game that a tap land doesn't matter and that we have 2 dead opponents. And then the Stomping Grounds is the final land, really just because it enters untapped, taps for both colors, and it's fetchable with like other cards like Vorinclex or Nature's Lore or whatever. The final basics or other lands, 14 forests and 9 mountains. We are very, very green heavy in the deck, so that's why we have the disparity. I didn't want to add Yavi Maya or whatever because like it doesn't really matter too much and we don't want to help any of our opponents out potentially. So that should be like 36 lands with MDFCs and all that. But honestly, guys, that's it. Thank you guys for watching. Get the cards you need from the link down below. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I always appreciate it. And really, let me know what you think about this deck, because I think this deck's actually really interesting, and I like the whole fight theme. So let me know your take on it. My throat hurts. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.